Hi, welcome to Verona's stormwater quality presentation for the City of Verona. My name's Marty Cieslik. I'm your presenter, and this was originally presented as a virtual presentation through the Verona Public Library on January 18th, 2022. I'm going to share my screen now. Just give me 1 minute. Tonight's presentation will cover just briefly the big picture of stormwater management and why we're looking at stormwater quality in particular. We'll talk briefly about the nutrient problem in the Upper Sugar River watershed. I'll describe Verona's sampling program. I'll go over the results of the sampling from 2020 and 2021, talk about some upcoming work in 2022, and wrap up the presentation with some reminders of some things that people can do on their own. This is a map of showing the Mississippi River watershed. Notice that it covers about half to 2/3 of the continental United States. And the reason I show this is because one, Verona is in the Mississippi River watershed, and two, every year, spring, summer, fall, a dead zone or hypoxic zone, essentially a low oxygen zone, develops in the Gulf of Mexico off of the mouth of the Mississippi. And that's as a result of all the pollution that comes down the Mississippi River from the Mississippi and all the tributaries. Closer to home, Verona sits in the Sugar River watershed, and in particular, the Upper Sugar River watershed. About 175 square miles, relatively small area. We're just west of Madison. The watershed runs from roughly Verona out to Mount Horeb and then down to Belleville. It's part of the Sugar River that ultimately runs out of the state and into the Rock River actually joins the Pecatonica, then the Rock River, and then ultimately drains to the Mississippi River. The nutrient pollution problem in the Sugar River is, we're going to focus tonight on phosphorus. We look at that in particular because it's a limiting nutrient. If we eliminate that or minimize that nutrient in the available nutrients in the water, then we can reduce some of the problems that are associated with nutrient overload in water, in particular algae blooms. There are point sources of phosphorus, such as wastewater treatment plants and urban stormwater runoff, and there are non-point sources such as agricultural runoff. Between 2015 and 2017, the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association did a series of sampling events in the watershed for phosphorus. And I was fortunate to be part of that program and have a chance to review that data. And the work that we're doing is part of that work that was done by the Sugar River watershed. This is a map showing the sampling locations over the 3 years, 2015 in purple, 2016 in orange, and 2017 in pink. We did sampling for the 6 months period from June through September, October, May to October. There are 3 wastewater treatment plants in the watershed that discharge into the river. Madison Met over on the east side, Mount Horeb, and then Belleville. And these plants This is important because these plants, wastewater plants, their permits are based on the water quality in the Sugar River, and phosphorus is a particularly challenging uh, nutrient and pollutant for them to manage. So between those, over that 3-year period, USRWA monitored 21 sites, 180 data points. 44% of those did not meet standard based on the water quality standard of 75 micrograms per liter, or essentially 75 parts per billion. This map shows you, based on that 3 years of data, which parts of the watershed waterways were meeting standards. These are highlighted in blue, which had mixed results, which generally meant half of the data points were exceeding and half were below the standard of 75 micrograms per liter. And then the purple stands for those areas where the standard was exceeded more than 4 times during those 6 sampling events. So you can see quite a bit of the Badger Milk Creek, which runs through the city of Verona, and the main branch of the Sugar River that runs along the east are all impacted. Sections of the west branch of the Sugar River and Deer Creek in particular are being impacted. Sections of Primrose, Friars Creek, and Mount Vernon Creek were actually responding quite well. And the upper portion of the main branch of the river had very mixed results. So this leads to the fact that at some point in the future, the Sugar River is likely going to be issued a total maximum daily load allocation, or TMDL. And the communities and permit holders in there will be allocated loadings for phosphorus in efforts to meet that water quality standard. That's different than what our current stormwater quality permit is in the city of Verona. We're currently based on TDS, in particular as a pollutant loading, and it's based on accounting for the various treatment strategies that are put in place for urban stormwater runoff. So the data that we've collected that I'm about to go over will be valuable in the city, having the city understand how it can meet that stormwater quality goal in the future. Verona has over 60 publicly owned stormwater basins. In 2021, we sampled 8 of those basins. 7 of those basins were wet ponds. We sampled of those 7 basins 3 times through the course of the year. And then we sampled our new Lincoln Street facility once during construction, and then at 2 points on that facility after it was completed late in the year. So the data is going to be a little bit funny when I present it all, but hopefully I can narrow it down to explain some trends that we're starting to see. Why these 6 basins? 6 of the ponds are part of a longer term monitoring strategy to understand where our water quality is going. 3 of those 6 ponds were treated in 2021, so we're doing some follow-up monitoring on those. We added a new pond from 2020 that's a targeted pond for future maintenance. And then the one pond that underwent major modification is the Lincoln Street pond. And then 2 ponds were dropped from the 2020 program because that initial round of data had served its purpose. So I won't be speaking very much on those 2 that we dropped. I'll be mostly comparing the overlapping years. In 2021, we did 30 sets of water samples. In May, before and after sample treatment of the ponds, and then June, August, and October. And the 8 basins were Silent Street Pond, Prairie Oaks Pond, Meister Addition West Pond, Hawthorne Hills or Tower Park Pond, Whalen Pond, American Way Pond out near Wisconsin Brewing, the new upgraded City Hall Pond, which is now called the Lincoln Street facility. We sampled it once in July and then in December at 2 points, and then the Cathedral Point Pond. These numbers refer to our keeping track of the basins. And so you'll see those referred to on the charts in the subsequent parts of the presentation. In 2020, we sampled on June 5th, August 5th, and October 5th. The concept here is sample in late spring, midsummer, and early fall. It is not an absolutely perfect way to sample, but what we're trying to cover is that variation through the growing season, and especially when there's runoff water being delivered into the ponds. So in 2021, in May, we sampled the 3 ponds that we treated: Silent Street, Meister Edition West, and American Way Pond, both before and after. So you'll see some results. They'll have more results than the other ponds. And we continued to sample 3 ponds that we had sampled in 2020, and those were the Prairie Oaks Pond, Whalen Pond, and Cathedral Point. Prairie Oaks and Cathedral Point are also ponds that are on our radar screen for possibly being cleaned out in the relatively near future. We added 2 new sites in 2021. Again, that was the Tower Hill site, or Hawthorne Hill South, number 37, and that Lincoln Street facility. The results, we had 11 parameters. We looked at some fundamental water quality characteristics, and then we looked at nutrients. In general, our water in our stormwater ponds is soft water. It's basically rainwater that's picked up a little bit of sediment from running off and running through the streets and the gutters. We did a presentation called Stormwater Basics back at in December. I'll touch on that, but a recording of that presentation is available on the library website. In 2020, 71% of our samples exceeded the water quality standard for phosphorus, and that was 17 out of 24 samples had higher phosphorus than that 75 micrograms per liter. In 2021, we had 20 out of 30 samples that had higher than standard levels of phosphorus. Now, the sample sets are different, so let's not jump to conclusions that we've made improvement. And part of that also was the fact that I was sampling before and after. So in general, in terms of stormwater quality, we're focusing on phosphorus because that's the impairment that has been identified and listed for the Upper Sugar River watershed. So we want to know what our phosphorus levels are doing, and it'll serve roughly as a guide for an indicator, if you will, of water quality in Verona. So in 2021, our phosphorus results ranged high value from what we sampled of 512 micrograms per liter down to 14.7. And this 14.7 was a result of a sample taken after we had treated one of our ponds. Here are the pond numbers listed. The bar graphs show roughly the concentrations at the various sample dates. So this is Silent Street, Prairie Oaks, Meister Pond, Tower Hill, Whalen Pond, American Way. Here's our new pond, Lincoln Street 66. The W stands for the wet portion, and then the 66 is the discharge coming out of that pond. And then Cathedral Point. And the colors correspond to the dates of those samples. So notice the shape if you were to draw a line from the tops of these bar graphs. So we're going up and down and up and down. And the pattern is not consistent from basin to basin. So it is a little bit confusing. And obviously, some of our ponds have much less phosphorus than some of our other ponds. In 2020, this is what our year-over-year graph looked like. And obviously, we've got the ponds that we dropped in here. But again, the shapes are not all the same. They're not all going up through the course of the summer. They're not all decreasing. They're not all showing this hump in the middle. They all have these interesting characteristics. And again, color of the bar corresponds to the sampling date. And these are the pond numbers down at the bottom. So comparing 2020 and 2021 from sites that were monitored in consecutive years, it looks like this. So you can compare Silent Street in 2020 and Silent Street in 2021. Interestingly, the pattern in Silent Street is the same. Phosphorus increased in August, and then dropped off in October. This doesn't include the treatment at Silent Street. Again, Prairie Oaks, a complete reversal. It just continued to increase throughout the course of the year. In 2020, Prairie Oaks simply declined. And so you can just see that this pattern is different year over year. And there are obviously factors that are affecting that. And we'll come back to that a little bit later in the presentation. I'll go through the individual ponds, show you the data, show you the ranges of the phosphorus levels that we recorded in 2020, and then in 2021. The more recent will be first, and then the 2020 data. So you have a chance to look at how that water quality is changing. So in 2021, Silent Street was a pond that we treated, and so you're seeing that higher level after treatment decrease, and then increase, and then decrease. And here's the numbers for those. Here's 2020 before we did treatment, up and then down. We had also sampled some sediments back in 2018 there, and we took quite a bit of phosphorus out with when we removed that sediment. So that sediment's not resuspending. Here's a map of Silent Street across from the Verona Library. It's at the intersection of Enterprise Drive and Silent Street, kind of a favorite pond around the city. Carries quite a bit of phosphorus traditionally, based on the data that I've collected. Prairie Oaks Pond, no cleaning this year. 2020, slight increase through the course of the year. 2021, 2020, it decreased across throughout the course of the year. We did measure sediment in that pond back in 2020 when we collected some sample in anticipation of doing some clean out in the next couple of years. Here's the Prairie Oaks Pond at Cross Country Road and Enterprise. Silent Street and Prairie Oaks also feed into our new Lincoln Street facility. So that's why we're in particular monitoring these two ponds relatively closely. Meister Pond out near Epic. Here we had that it was unusual in that right after treatment, we had a slight increase in phosphorus, but then in June, it dropped off again, and then we saw a gradual increase in phosphorus throughout the course of 2021. Here's my numbers again for the for phosphorus for 2021. Interestingly, Meister Pond in 2020 had a decrease June to August, and then a big spike in October. And then in February of 2021, while we were getting ready to pre-treat or ready for treatment, we had a sample that showed that level was dropping off. And because we cleaned out that pond, we had a reference sample on the concentration of phosphorus in the sediment that we removed. Here's the Meister Pond. It sits between Breckenridge Road and Northern Lights across from the Epic campus. And in particular, we're interested in following this pond because we're upstream of water that we deliver onto the Epic campus and then ultimately out to the Sugar River. Hawthorne Hills, which is a newly targeted pond for cleanout, where we saw a decrease across the year. This is the first year of sampling, so we don't have any year over year to compare to. Here's the Hawthorne Hills Pond, also known as Tower Park, because there's a Verona water tower is out, sits out on that property, and it's at off of Fairview Terrace. Whalen Pond in 2021, we saw an increase and then a decrease. However, I'd like to point out some very low numbers compared to, say, Silent Street, order of magnitude lower, or maybe 4 or 5 times lower than, say, the levels that we're seeing in Silent Street. In 2020, saw a decrease across the years. And here's Whalen Pond. It's got 2 parts to it off of Whalen Road. It's the one that is noted for the observation deck, the shelter, children from Glacier Edge Elementary School often come out here and use it as a place as sort of an outdoor laboratory. So we've been doing things out at this pond over the course of a number of years. And I've been sampling on the west side of that because that's where the water then discharges off of that deck. American Way Pond out at Wisconsin Brewing, decrease after treatment, and then increase through June to August, and then decrease in October in 2021. Again, our numbers relatively low when compared to, say, Cathedral Point or Silent Street, which are higher level phosphorus ponds. In 2020, we saw a gradual increase in phosphorus. Interestingly, in doing our pre-dosing bench testing, we saw that water come back down in February 2021. Different labs, so I don't want to make too much of that. I'm not sure how reliable we are going across labs, but interesting that we have had that decrease through the course of the winter. American Way Pond at American Way and Thousand Oaks Trail. Here's Wisconsin Brewing. People quite often are out there in the summertime with the music, outdoor tasting bar, and so forth. Cathedral Point is a pond in one of our parks in our relatively new subdivision, the Cathedral Point. Here's our 2021 data, a little bit lower and a dip in the middle of the year, and then a tick up in October. 2020, kind of the reverse, high in the middle of the year and then a drop off. We haven't done any sampling of the sediments in Cathedral Point. That's on our radar to do in the coming years as we're gearing up to do a clean out on that pond, which is not officially scheduled. Here's the Cathedral Point Pond. It's off of Westminster Way and Cathedral Point Drive. And then East Chapel Royal is up here. This happens to be an older photograph prior to the complete build out of the pond. So here's just a general graph showing all of the results of the ponds that we treated in the ponds that were treated in 2021 with the data going back to 2020. So Silent Street Pond, very high level in August, drop off in October, higher level in May prior to treatment, nice drop off right after treatment, and then an increase, and then a drop off in phosphorus levels. Here's the Meister Pond, that big spike in October of 2020, and then our treatment. Here's where we had that slight increase. I think what happened there is we probably stirred up the mud a little bit in that and resuspended some sediment. Then a nice decrease, and then a gradual increase. American Way Pond, increase in 2020 prior to treatment, up here at about almost 100 micrograms per liter. Big drop off from the treatment, and then gradual increase, and then a nice little drop off in October of 2020. So a couple things are probably influencing the trends in water quality when you look at phosphorus over time. One of those has to be rainfall. And so here's a chart showing our rainfall 10 days prior to sampling and 30 days prior to sampling. So in the 10-day range, over the course of the two sampling seasons, kind of close results, and certainly, but in the 30-day prior, much different years, 2020 versus 2021. 2021 was a considerably drier year, but by no means complete lack of rain in 2021. Here's that year over year of sites that were sampled in consecutive years, and so again, looking at those trends, they're not necessarily the same year over year. In particular, Cathedral Point was reversed, and Prairie Oaks was reversed. But one of the things that I think is starting to jump out as making a difference is when we look at the size of the pond compared to the drainage area that is draining into that pond. So here are the areas of the pond. Here are the areas of the drainage shed that drain into it, and then looking at a ratio of drainage area to area of the pond. So Silent Street, which is a pond that traditionally is carrying high levels of phosphorus, has a very high ratio. In other words, it's a small pond compared to what's draining to it. Compared to American Way Pond, which is has a much smaller 20-to-1 ratio of drainage shed to pond size. So this is starting to look like a main reason why we're seeing these relative differences. So ponds that have high drainage area to pond area sizes are tending to seem to have higher levels of phosphorus compared to ponds that have larger ponds relative to the area that's draining them. And then that pond that's in the middle seems to be responding to the rainfall events more significantly. There obviously could be other factors going on, but these are a couple that seem to jump out. So again, that chart showing that ratio of pond area to drainage area, that seems to be an important factor. And then this is Hawthorne Hills, so that's going to be a middling site that will probably see some significant changes over the course of the year for phosphorus levels. Our plan for 2022 is basically to continue to monitor the basins that we did in 2021. Here's a map of where those basins are in the city of Verona. Prairie Oaks, Silent Street, our new Lincoln Street facility, Whalen Pond, Hawthorne Hills, Cathedral Point, Verona Tech Park, and then the Meister off on the west side. Now, I'd just like to give you a few reminders on things that of programs that are available and things that you can do to help us with water quality issues in the city of Verona. So consider installing a rain barrel, consider putting in a rain garden. We have some rebate programs for that. Please keep that trash and yard waste out of the streets. Consider adjusting your water softener cycle to cycle just slightly less than it currently is. That's a request from MMSD. Be judicious in using your salt on your sidewalks and in your driveways. Consider joining USRWA, or at least being aware of this organization. They have some volunteer opportunities that the city supports through its membership, and we utilize that as a volunteer and hands-on opportunity for our citizens. Rebate program, City of Verona will rebate $10 per rain barrel installed. Up to 4 rain barrels will rebate 50% of the cost of your native plants that you install in a rain garden. You can go online, type in the search bar on the city website, rain barrel or rain garden rebate to get the details of that. I don't want to give too many details because these programs are likely going to be adjusted from the way they currently are. We also offer mapping assistance if you're interested in a map of your property showing where the contour lines, the land surface contour lines are on your property. All of these you can apply online through the city website. Again, put that in the search box for rain barrel rebate or rain garden rebate. The map assistance application comes through the rain garden rebate program. You just check that you're not submitting a rebate request, but that you want maps. You're looking for a map. There's a box for that. We have some previously recorded presentations available that are tying into this program. A discussion on the construction of the Lincoln Street facility, a program on using the treatment that we did, a program on stormwater basics, which talks about how our water quality, or what the differences between stormwater, wastewater, and our drinking water. Excuse me. I have a presentation called City of Verona Water Resources that just talks about where our water comes from and where it goes. And then I have a presentation scheduled for February 16th, where I'll be talking about how we're planning for doing stormwater pond maintenance going forward. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions during the presentation. Obviously, this is a recording, so we won't have any questions. Oh, stop sharing. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And take care. Be well.